We are recording.
Great. Thank you. So I know this is certainly, as this is only our second meeting and the first one was in person, this is our first virtual meeting. A few quick items before we really kick into everything. We certainly will be having lots of discussion tonight, some group breakout sessions. That's all going to be handled by Sarah and through WebEx. So you really just need to sit on your computer and you'll be broken into a room and come back again. If you are experiencing where right now what you are seeing is the Newtown Task Force meeting number 1, I'm going to drag my screen over so that you can see it. I'll be looking a little to the side as I'm trying to explain this. If you are having some trouble of seeing more than just a handful of folks as it looks right now, go up to where it says focus view or grid view and click on the grid view. And what you can do is drag from a corner or from a side. You see how my arrow turns into the double arrow. And as you drag it larger, it will update the view so that you are able to see more and more people. You might still have some on the next page as you're going through. That's because we do have a large number of individuals in here. And what will happen as we get into more and more discussions is that, and I just reset mine, so give me 1 second here. As we get into more and more discussions, what I will do is I will stop sharing. So then it will come back to a screen that looks like this. You'll be able to see everybody at one time. So that is, as folks are talking, you certainly want to share that with have everybody be able to see each other. Would also ask that, again, from a virtual platform perspective, everybody keeps their video on throughout the course of our meeting, just so that we are able to interact as much as possible in a virtual platform. And also just be aware of the mute and unmute button. So if you're not speaking, to go ahead and keep yourself muted. That will help with feedback that invariably happens in virtual meetings. And then, of course, unmute yourself as you wish to speak. And finally, there is the raise hand. So there is a feature where you can raise your hand virtually. And it looks like that. It's nice and big, so it makes it easy to see. The other thing that you can do, because again, technology works for some and not always for some, and that could be the same person on any given day, is that you can also just raise your hand in this manner so that you are able to, we are able to just see everybody and you can just focus in that manner. Any questions? All right. So I will go ahead and reshare my screen, and as soon as that pops up for everybody, and I will turn it over to Sarah and Kristen and Mary to begin.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Mary, did you want to have a quick welcome just before we get started?
Yeah, sure. I'll just let everybody know who I am. Thanks for joining us. Mary Kendall, Deputy Director of DPZ. Just sitting in for Linda Eisenberg, who is on a well-deserved vacation. So thank you all for joining us today, and I'll hand it back over to Sarah.
All right. Thanks, Mary. Looking forward to getting started on our second task force meeting. Thanks, everybody, for joining virtually. And with that, I will hand it over to Jennifer.
Great. Thank you so much. As I mentioned, we will have plenty of opportunities for discussion this evening, but I do want to kick off just sharing our agenda. So tonight we'll go through welcome and introductions. We do have 2 individuals who were not able to attend the first meeting due to prior commitments made before the meeting dates were set. So we'll do some quick introductions there for those individuals and for all of us to get to know them as well. And we'll do a quick recap. So I'll just ask 1 or 2 people their thoughts from the first meeting, just a couple of points that came out that really resonated with them. And I'll go through a couple of quick points as well. Certainly, we'll go through these next 2 items on B and C. They're going to be repetitive from what we have talked about at the first meeting. We'll continue to just highlight them every single meeting because it's always good to come back to what is our purpose for this task force, what are our ground rules, the overall schedule, and certainly you'll see where we're moving through that schedule, and then the expectations of what are the expectations for this meeting so that we can work to ensure we are meeting those expectations or at least identifying more information for individuals. There were a number of questions and information requests that came out of the very first meeting. So we will go through that because we always want to ensure that we're providing that information, that we're transparent in this process. We do have some case studies to share with you. And of course, the visioning exercise, which will really play off of that homework as well. And that's where we'll have these group breakout sessions. We'll touch on the online survey information, and all of these will make a lot more sense as we get to them. There is going to be a public survey, so we want to get input from this task force into that. Introduce the concept of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, the SWOT analysis, and then talk about homework for the next meeting, wrap up, have our open comments, and adjourn. It's a lot to cover in 2 hours, and so we definitely want to go ahead and jump right in right now. So going back to our welcome, introductions, and recap, again, thank you everybody for all of the time you have already put in with signing up to be on this task force, with your participation and attendance at the first meeting, and with the homework assignment. We've had an opportunity to review all of them. Very well thought out, very robust ideas coming out of that. So just always want to say thank you, because the whole concept of Columbia and how this was started is it was a work in progress by people with a vision and people working together. And that's really what this is about as well, is bringing people together to work together. I do want to call on our 2 individuals, and I will start with Stacy, who was not here. And I'm not seeing her on my screen.
I'm actually a male. So.
No, not you. Our second person.
Oh, all right.
You were a male. Our second person is female. But Stacy,
Ashley, I believe, has joined us as well.
Yes, thank you. That's what I was looking around, and that's probably on my second page. So Stacy, if you can please just share what we did during the first meeting is everybody just shared a little bit about themselves, very briefly, what your role has been, kind of, and where you're coming from, and do you work, live, play, all of the above in Columbia?
Sure. Stacy Spann. I live in Howard County currently. That's not a surprise. I have 2 kids who've gone to Howard County schools. I myself graduated from Hammond High School in Howard County. I was the former director of housing and community development for Howard County, as well as executive director of Howard County Housing's Housing Authority. I have worked also as an assistant commissioner for development finance in Baltimore for the housing for Baltimore Housing. I spent, I don't know, a little over a decade running Housing Opportunities Commission in Montgomery County. Basically housing all the time. So that, just to cut it short, and have lived here since we returned to Maryland in the early 2000s. So, this has been a great place for me to raise a family. It's a great place to go to high school. And so I'm thrilled and honored to be back and hopefully have a little something to contribute.
Great. Thank you so much. And our second one, who is a woman, so Ashley. Ashley, if you could just share the same information for yourself.
Sure. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Wonderful. I'm Ashley Vaughn. I've lived in Columbia about 30 years now, product of Wild Lake Middle, Wild Lake High, HCC. I worked at Columbia Association about 15 years ago. I'm currently on the CA board. I participated in the Millennial Advisory Committee. I finished the Howard County class with DPZ recently this year. yeah, I've bought into the vision of Columbia, what it was supposed to be. So I'm excited to get to join this task force.
Great. Thank you. And again, welcome to both of you. We will not go through everybody at this time, just with the agenda, but certainly as we continue working together, want to definitely welcome both of you in and have you interacting with everybody as soon as possible. From a quick recap, let me call, and I'm just looking at my screen here, let me call on Michael. And Michael, I know I will butcher your last name, so I will just say Michael G. If you don't mind giving a point, something that resonated with you from the last meeting.
I promise I'll go on screen once I'm at my desk. But I think one thing that really stuck out to me is there was a lot of consensus when we were talking about what was it, the branding or whatever, I forget exactly how we called it, the branding of Columbia. But there was a lot of consensus around a lot of it, and especially the value of, the natural spaces in our community. And that seems to be pretty unanimously supported by everyone. Unless Ashley disagrees. She probably doesn't think so, right, Ashley?
Wasn't here. I'm sure it was unanimous.
And I'm just looking across my screen. So Renee, do you mind sharing just something that resonated with you from the first meeting?
I'd rather not comment at this time.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to comment right now? Nina.
So I thought one of the things that resonated across a lot of the groups was the comments on diversity and inclusion, which seemed to be fairly unanimous, not necessarily at the top, but I saw and heard that a lot. Particularly, I understand everyone has their own background, but I did hear that especially from members of the group who had a lot of personal influence for those issues in their families and why this space might be particularly important or particularly safe for them.
Great, thank you. And so just as I said, what I'd like to do at each of our meetings is do that quick recap. If there is a point that resonates, for doing it the first time, this was a surprise for you as task force members. So just something to be aware of moving forward. That we'll have this quick recap, just as I said, something that might resonate with you from that meeting previously. And just an overarching recap of what we had looked at for the benefit of all. We did have the meeting minutes distributed, but a lot of our first meeting, as we had shared in those one-on-one kind of meet and greet meetings, is a lot of level setting. What is the information? Where are the resources to use? So some of you in this task force have been a part of Columbia and Newtown, and really being there from when it was first an idea of just here's a display and come and see what this is about, and you watched it grow as you bought in the very beginning. Some of you have moved here recently and may not be as well versed in what is Newtown zoning and what does that mean. So we've done a lot of level setting. The exercise that was mentioned was one where we talked about character. And that was really leading us to the homework assignment, which was about visioning. And I'll get into that more later just before we go into our group breakouts. But the concept of this is that we are not here to redefine what Columbia Association has in their master plan or what Howard County has in HOCO by design. What we're here to do is identify in these first few steps to really identify what is the vision of this output for this committee, what are the major themes, and that way it will be used as our method to measure every recommendation that comes forward with that. Certainly we'll talk about that more later, but that's really what last meeting and tonight's meeting is to come to concurrence on that statement or statements that we can use as essentially our guiding principles to measure all of our recommendations through. So moving on, as I mentioned, items B and C will be repetitive, from prior meetings, and we'll continue to repeat these as we go through, just as a good reminder. There's a month in between, month between meetings. Our next meeting will be in 2 months from now. So just as a good reminder, but I'll go through them pretty quickly as well. So this is something, the Newtown Task Force is something supported by County Executive Calvin Ball, and is in fact an executive order. 2 executive orders, the one that defined the task force, and then the addition of another member, so that we make sure we represent the diversity of the community that is out here. And so these are just the executive orders that established this task force and the additional one to it. It's about evaluating and making recommendations. And those recommendations can be modifications to the zoning regulations and the development processes, but that is just it. Everything we are doing is recommendations based, and there will be a report of those recommendations as our end product. This task force and where this all came from did come through HOCO by Design, and so you can see the reference on this page of what it is that we are why we're here and what we're doing here. The ground rules, as we've talked about from facilitation, and certainly as we had opportunities to meet one-on-one, you'll be very tired of hearing me say this by the end of all of this, but the facilitation concept being, I bring my best, you bring your best, together we build something even better. I will constantly say I am so impressed with the diversity and uniqueness that each member of this task force brings, and the varied life experiences within and outside of Newtown zoning and Columbia, and it will just be an asset as we have discussions. So I think that is really where this really comes into play. Our run of meeting, we will do a simplified format of Robert's Rules of Parliamentary Procedures. We will have group sessions. We do want these to be interactive. It will feel at times like we're just talking. A lot of that is trying to share the information so then we can have these very robust discussions. In the end, I am simply here as the facilitator to provide information, and then the group will have the discussions, and these are recommendations of this task force. As I mentioned, given our limited breaks, even on a virtual platform, we only have 2 hours, or given our limited time together, we only have these 2 hours. So we're going to go right through everything. And then phone calls, if you really need to take a phone call during these 2 hours on a virtual platform, please turn your video off at that time and turn yourself to mute at that time, and take the call as is necessary for you to take. From our interaction, talked about 2 different ways to raise your hand. One is through the platform. The other is just simply doing this. And if I'm the one speaking and haven't, I most likely will have already seen you and will want to complete my thought, and then we'll call on you. If I happen to not call on you, there are several other facilitators in the room, the virtual room as well, who will help me in making sure that I have seen and we do call on each person. We've already talked about clarifying questions. We want to make sure we understand the information that you're providing, and then relevant topics may be tabled to a later time. So there's a lot of the bulk of our work will be in our next section of meetings, which is the SWOT analysis, which is really where we're going to dig in and really start diving into what do we need to retain? What might we simplify? How do we keep the heart and the intention as we want to, as this task force wants to? And then non-relevant topics, we do have the flip chart of where we'll put that and get information back. And as I mentioned before, I continue to be impressed at all of our different backgrounds, all of our different lived experiences. It gives our own perspectives. There's no right or wrong. It's just different ways to see things. And we want to celebrate that, explore that, understand that, and work together to build something that's even better using the strength of our different backgrounds. So this is a very quick go through. I want to touch on our overall schedule and expectations. So this is the same schedule you will see every single time. And simply the change will be that the We Are Here box will move. Where we are, and just the benefit for everybody, and I see you, Renee, and I'll come right back to you, is we are still in this visioning area. And so this is that meeting. You can see the white dot, so that's August. We will not have a meeting in August. When we reconvene, we will reconvene into the SWOT analysis. And then we will have these 10 meetings. The draft report will be overlapping with recommendations so that you know this is the recommendations are, and the draft report are an output of the task force. It is, we as the facilitators are simply putting all of that together and presenting it for everybody to have concurrence with it. Renee.
This is completely off topic. Brian England has emailed me and asked that you send him a new link. He can't get into the meeting.
Oh,
Thanks for letting us know. I'll
That's-
reach out.
perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Renee.
And on that, can we just confirm who is on calling in on the phone? I see we have a number. I just want to identify that so we have a record of who's here. They're unmuted. It ends in 18, the number?
That's Tim May.
Tim May. Okay, great. Thank you for confirming. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, I'm having problems with the link also.
Oh, you are? Have you been able to utilize, do you know that there's like a password for access, or is it just you're not even?
It's the password that's
Right.
keeps on, it says that I have the incorrect password.
Incorrect password. Okay, we'll work with you to get that fixed.
Great.
Jeff,
so
it's
thank you for
Karen.
calling.
Just so you know, I had the exact same problem. I ended up signing in on my browser where it didn't ask me for a password. So
Oh, interesting. All right.
Great.
All right, let's we'll try and send you off some another link or some other instructions and see if you can't get going on that front. But we'll continue with the presentation. Sorry, everybody.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. And thank you, Karen and Renee, for bringing that forward. As you noted, this obviously we want everyone to join in for all of the discussions. And this beginning portion is all of this is recorded so that those who haven't been able to join in yet will still be able to go back and see and listen to this meeting. Moving into the task force member expectations, we've talked of having engaged and focused discussions. So this really is about everybody working together. There are 10 now. With the first one has been held. This is our second one. There will be 8 more after this over the next months, and then the potential to reconvene over the next 18 months. We do have 2 public meetings. You are not required to as a task force member. You are highly encouraged to attend, and we'll actually talk about that first meeting coming up soon. And homework, hopefully, as you were doing the homework, you know, it was that 4 to 8 hours. It might have been a little bit more on the vision side, because that can be, especially if you've never worked on vision statements, it can be just some time to kind of put your thoughts together. But this should, after this first month, really give a good feel for that time expectation as well. So at this time, I will turn it over to Toby. And similar to our first meeting, given what we've talked about already, as well as what you've seen in the schedule and your own thoughts, we want to hear your expectations. And Toby, it might be easiest for you to just call on people around the room and run down the list, and we'll be taking notes.
All right, I am going to go down the list that I have on my people list. Could I start with Tim, since your number starts first? Do you have any expectations specifically for this meeting, and if so, what would they be?
I think I'm looking forward to hearing everybody's kind of their work, their homework, and kind of think what they're thinking about, what their vision is. I look forward to hearing the great diversity of thought.
Excellent. Ashley, do you have any expectations? We send out the agenda and we send out other information. So hopefully everyone will get used to the idea of coming with expectations of the meeting. So we will be asking this every time that we meet. So Ashley, do you have any thoughts about what you expect to get out of this meeting?
Yeah, that's a good heads up. Good to know. So this is my first meeting. I'm really just hoping to create a better understanding about what it is as the task force we're going to be producing and how it will be used.
Excellent. Cassidy, you're next on the list.
Cassidy's one of ours.
Hello.
Oh,
can you
I'm
hear me?
sorry. I
She's
totally
helping put
forgot
out a
that.
wonderful group session as a facilitator.
There you go. You're sitting down just like everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, we're in the same room.
That's right. David.
I guess.
Oh,
Yeah, we can
go
move
ahead,
on to
Cassidy.
David. Oh,
Oh,
No, it's fine. It's fine. You can go on.
all right. I think we'll move on to David
David Costello.
Costello. Correct.
Yeah, so I'm driving, so I've got my video off. Honestly, I don't really have any. My overall expectation when I agreed to be on it was just to, you know, we're have a significant interest in land and buildings and stuff in the Lakefront District, which is obviously qualifies for the zoning that's in question. And so, you know, my interest is really in making sure that the use of the land isn't significantly changed. And in this process, I'm really trying to figure out what all this has to do with land use zoning. So I'm still sort of trying to figure it out a little bit. My expectation is that we improve and we don't go backwards.
Excellent. Okay. Well, hopefully you'll be a little bit more clear by the end of this meeting and by each subsequent meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm optimistic that everything's going to work out great. I'm not understanding the correlation, for instance, between the brand of Columbia and zoning rules and regulations and laws. I'm still waiting to figure that out. If you want to shed light on that now, that would be great. I'm not getting the connection between all of this and, you know, the issue that I thought was at hand, which is Newtown zoning and any refinements that are going to be proposed to that.
absolutely. And tonight's meeting will do that. And as we get into a little bit of the answering questions from meeting one, I'll add in a little there as well.
Okay.
Great. Fran.
Hi, everyone. I guess I'm kind of interested for tonight in how many people use environment or paths or whatever, because I kind of feel like it's a defining aspect of Columbia. If you look in the regs, the percent of open space is quite high in Columbia compared to other zoning districts, you know, in the county. So I'm interested to how that to me is one of the largest defining attributes, I should say. I'm kind of interested how many people agree and what the other ones are that's at the top of their list. I'm just kind of interested where everybody comes from.
Great. Well, hopefully you'll learn a lot about that tonight. Gregory. If you're able to
Hi,
unmute.
I'm here. I'm here.
Excellent.
And, I am in somewhat the same mode as Mr. Costello. I'm here because of my concern for zoning. Over the weekend, I sent to everybody on the task force, I hope you got it, an email package that came as a result of some discomfort I had coming out of the first meeting. I've been here for all but maybe 1 or 2 years of the existence of Columbia, and my overall abiding understanding, as I expressed in the items I sent to you, is that Newtown zoning can not be changed. And so this is a really big deal. And I'm approaching it as being a really big deal. And part of the flavor feel I got out of the first meeting was that it was almost something of a charade where we're going to be led along a path, and you folks at JMT would produce a report at the end, and that would become a part of the permanent record. I got the minutes of the first meeting, and they really didn't touch on some of the things that were discussed and pushed a little bit at the end of the first meeting. That caused me more concern. And the more I thought about it, I guess I see us as an independent body, and that we should be deciding how this task force works, how we go forward, what our agenda items, should be. I feel that we take the genesis of our existence from the county council. The order came from the county executive, but I think the work of the task force should be our product. It should contain the flavor of our deliberations. And I think really, given that when Columbia was planned and developed all those years ago, it was done by world-class planners. And we as an independent body should have the benefit of being able to engage someone or some bodies at that level to assist us going through this. But first of all, I think we need to determine whether or not it's legal for us to change the covenants and new town zoning. So I'm hopeful that maybe I stimulated enough thought on the part of people over the weekend that maybe we could have some discussion tonight on those subjects and think about how we're going to go forward and how we're going to work together. So that would, if I had an expectation, that would be it.
Okay. Hannah Weber.
I'm with the county.
Oh, I'm sorry, Hannah. I'm just going down my list, so I'm not paying attention to who I'm looking at either, because they're not all on the screen at the same time. I apologize. Ian Kennedy.
Yeah, well, looking at the agenda, I think the thing that I am most interested in is the case studies portion and learning more about, obviously Columbia is unique. We are one of one. But we, just as Columbia was founded by looking around the world and seeing how communities were effective at achieving the goals and the aspirations that Columbia has and still had and still has. I think we can learn a lot if we are open to looking to others who have gone through revitalizations like ours, who have dealt with some of the challenges that we've dealt with. Obviously, not exactly like them. So I am looking forward to learning.
Excellent. Well, hopefully you will learn. Joan.
So I also am very interested in what is on the agenda this evening. I am personally very pleased with the consultants' efforts thus far in learning about each one of this very diverse group of people who are not land use experts and are not professionals. My understanding is that the purpose of this group is to gather information from the general community. And I think that the consultant is doing a good job in that effort. And I look forward to this meeting and future meetings unfolding, and that we can all arrive at a product at the end that is satisfactory to most of us, at least, if not everyone.
All right, thank you. Judelle Campbell.
Hi, Judelle Campbell with the Columbia Association Community Planner. A couple of thoughts. I'll make the first one about the vision statement and the process of coming up with a vision. I know oftentimes people want to get straight to the nuts and bolts of things with regard to zoning, but in my perspective, all the things that come with zoning start with the vision, just as Columbia did. Columbia started with the vision, and if we can get clarity on the vision and where we want to be and where we would like to go, I think all those other pieces will definitely fall into place. My second thought is also about the diversity of the members of this task force. Really glad that we have a range of different professional and community members here, excited about taking advantage of their knowledge, whether it's in the community or in their professional roles. As we're talking about zoning, I think it's important to have people that deal with the zoning on a development basis in the room to get their input about their side of development. It's important to have community members in the room to get their input as to what they like to see with regards to development. But with all the different viewpoints that are being brought to the table and in the room, I think we're going to get some valuable insights as to what can work well in the future. Columbia has been a leader in the past. I'm excited to see what we do in the future. And with this composition of individuals in this room, there's a lot of great potential to come out with some good recommendations. So I'm excited about that.
Excellent. And thank you. Christy Smith.
Hey there. So I'm interested to see kind of the commonalities that exist across kind of the vision statements that were submitted as part of the homework, and then also excited to see the kind of the foundation setting for the SWOT analysis, as I think that'll be a really helpful kind of tool as we go forward.
Perfect. Karen Emery. Didn't mean to miss you.
No, that's totally fine. I didn't know where I fell on the list anyway. So, yeah, I'm really, my expectation for today is to try to understand what problem it is that we're actually trying to solve. So I thought that the first meeting was interesting and a fun exercise, but I wasn't sure what we were driving towards. And I'm a little bit on the same page of what Greg and David were saying previously is I'm not sure that there's anything wrong with zoning. I think that the way Columbia is laid out is pretty good. And knowing that we already have, the Columbia is pretty much built out at this point. We have 105,000 plus residents. Yeah, I really would just like to understand what problem it is we're trying to solve.
Hopefully the discussion that we have today and moving on will help to clarify that, and we'll come to consensus about it. Next is Michael Golubersich.
Well, Golubersich, yes.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no, it's okay. You threw me off since Matt Abrams comes alphabetically before me. I guess I'm looking forward to the more substantive parts of the conversation, that we're like a third of our way through our time tonight, and we're still feel like we're in the introductory part of the meeting. So I'd really like to get to the substantive parts of it.
Okay. And I will go back to Matt Abrams.
Hey everyone, I'm really looking forward to hearing everyone's vision statements from last time, and I'm also really looking forward to more clarity on what our scope of the recommendations, can be, because I'm hearing a lot of talk about covenants and stuff, but I believe that to be outside of our scope, so really looking forward to clarity on that. And also, I'd love more clarity on just how we're going to settle disagreements throughout this process, because I'd love for us all to be unanimous on everything, but I know we're eventually going to disagree on plenty of things. So just how disagreements can either be settled or just noted in any future reports would be really helpful.
Right. Nina Basu.
Hi. So for this meeting in particular, I will echo what David and Matt and others have said. I'm really looking forward at the end of this meeting to get those guardrails and what that finished product at the end of this process will look like.
Excellent. Thank you. Renee.
I'm going to say that Nina said just about everything I would like to say, and I would like to add to it. I would like to have an idea of the list of experts that we're going to have access to develop some of those recommendations. So will we have access to DPZ and other people from external vendors to get their take on some of the things that are going on in Columbia?
All right, we will definitely address that. Robin Harris.
Asking my opinion. I'm excited I've heard several people say things that I am thinking. So first and foremost, I'm excited to see how the vision statements all played out and how similar and different we are, because that's going to tell us how our thought processes are as we approach this. And I'm also really interested in learning for the final report. If there's a framework that we're trying to follow, that would help me kind of gain insight on where to put my focus during the SWOT analysis. Framework or a plan of approach for the says I'm looking forward to hearing about that, because those are things I like to delve into. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ryan Herman.
Yeah, I think I'm excited to hear about people's vision statements and everything. I imagine they aren't all going to be the same, which I think is a good thing, but will probably present some challenges when it comes to agreeing on recommendations or not, I guess, at that point. So yeah, I think I'm just excited to hear what everybody's thoughts about that were.
All right, thank you. Stacy, back to you.
Honestly, I'm just taking it all in. I didn't have the opportunity to do that in the first meeting, and so yeah, I think that's important, is to kind of take a moment and take it in, and then we'll see what happens. But it seems to be going well so far.
Excellent. Sharon Cooper Kerr.
Hello, everybody. I'm excited to be here tonight, and I'm definitely, so many things have been said that I can agree with, so I'm not going to reiterate that, but I would say I too am interested in learning more about our visioning statements and seeing how they align, and really working together with this fine group of community leaders to make what I believe is already a great city better.
Great. And I have Joel Hurowitz.
I think those are our attendee list.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. All right. It's on a list and it's in front of me, so I'm saying the name. Sorry.
Yeah, I think at this
I
time,
apologize.
it might just be Brian, and if there's anyone else who hasn't had an opportunity, go ahead and raise your hand. So Brian, we're just real quick, the expectations for this evening, and then we'll dive into a lot of content. And what I'd like to do is kind of address some of these expectations right up front, and then get into some of the information requests from our first meeting. And I think that will really help answer quite a few of the questions that have come up. So Brian?
Could you clarify that? What just an introduction, did you say?
It's just simply what is your expectation for this meeting? Just something
Okay.
brief.
Well, First of all, I'm not going to use my Mac anymore because I got in instantly using my iPad. So I don't know what the deal is. So here we are after half an hour or 45 minutes. Well, my expectations is really to understand how we're going to implement whatever we're going to be doing, and really understanding the governance and the important steps we need to go through in understanding that. So that's my number one thing. That's why I sent out to the whole group of you the 2007 Newtown Task Force report, which I think is a really good basis for what we to start with as we go forward. That's about it.
Great, thank you. Was there anybody that we might have missed on the list? All right, not seeing anyone. So I'm going to reshare my screen here, and there's a few things. There we go. So I want to be able to, and hit the share button. I want to be able to hop around a little bit here. So one of the items that came up from several individuals, and just touching on these expectations now, is, what are we doing? How is this being led by the task force? Who's determining the content, information of that nature? What we as JMT put together with the county was an overarching process, and that process being a little bit of what we've discussed already. Let's talk about that visioning, and I'll come to a slide that discusses that I'll rediscuss later, but why are we doing that, and how does that fall into it? Once we all come to that visioning, and generally what is that essentially litmus paper that we're testing against, then it really is digging into the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis. So the content that goes into each of these meetings will come out of the meeting prior. What are the major topics that are coming forward? What do we see? How can we provide you as individuals who do land use planning, who do zoning, who do this professionally, who do facilitation professionally, as these individuals who are certified planners ourselves? How do we go through this with you? How do we identify, what's working well, what's a challenge? How do we make that better? Something I was going to share later, but I think it's important to hear now is, there's a lot, and even from the visioning statements, and we've done a lot of analysis on that and understanding what are the themes, what are the major words. There's a lot of things that did correlate each other's vision statements to each other. And there's this understanding that, Jim Rouse was a visionary planner. There is absolutely no doubt about that. You've heard both Toby and I in the first meeting. Toby held up textbooks. I mean, there's a lot I learned about. We learned in our textbooks truly about Columbia. It was part of the AICP exam, my certification as a professional planner that I had to take. Jim Rouse started with a clean slate and developed all of this with a clean slate. And that's fantastic. And now what we're really looking at is, it's not a clean slate any longer. Many things are getting to, or going to be getting to, the end of their usable design life. Everything in infrastructure has a design life. So within this vision and concept, as Jim Rouse put forward, how do we make sure that Columbia, and whatever that looks like, has the opportunity to redevelop in areas that need redevelopment as the future unfolds 50 years from now, and no longer having it on a clean slate, but redevelop in a context that stays true to this overarching vision, which is shown in all of the master plans. And so that's really the context of, as we've heard, there's nothing wrong with the zoning. Maybe there's no changes. Well, maybe there are no changes. Perhaps that's the outcome of this whole task force. But without having the conversations, without digging in to understand from every single person's perspective and every single person's background, it's tough to come to that conclusion. So it's worth being in the HOCO by design as a comprehensive plan. It's worth being in as a county executive and county council put all of this forward. It's worth this time and energy to have these conversations, to then identify, okay, we are this far into a plan, we're built out, we don't have a clean slate any longer. So what happens when there's time to redevelop is that we still use exactly what we have, let's talk about that. And if that's the outcome, perhaps that's the outcome. Is it that we need to tweak what's in there in the FDPs and other elements so that that redevelopment, recognizing that we don't have a fully clean slate, we have a developed slate. And if we want to redevelop for relevancy in the world around us, let's make sure we put those guardrails on, as somebody had shared. So we don't have those guardrails. That's what the task force will be identifying. What does that look like? I know concerns are, well, if we change something, you know, our job here as a facilitator is every recommendation that's talked about is we're going to make sure it's talked about kind of the forward and backwards. What's the intended consequence? What's the unintended consequence, so that we can make sure the recommendation comes together and looks the way it's fully intended to, and there's not a loophole that to some people's, you know, who have expressed concerns, we don't want it to look very different, you know, that green space, that open space, honoring and protecting that. So that's where, as we mentioned, you know, our role here at JMT and as facilitators is we put out simply a process of, let's talk about what it is, that endpoint we want to get to first. Let's dig into the details and really understand what are our strengths. How do we make sure they stay strong? What are the opportunities? How do we seek out those opportunities? The weaknesses, how do we make them into strengths? And the threats, how do we protect ourselves of things that are out there? Through that conversation, then the recommendations come from you, the task force. We are simply taking all the information, and the reason why the draft report overlaps with the recommendations is we're simply doing the documentation of, we're doing the work of compiling it all, but it's your words as a task force. It's your recommendations as a task force. And you'll see that as we go through meeting by meeting, because every piece of this will be vetted through the task force. Another thing before I get into the prior meeting information requests, I'm going to just scroll down. There's a lot of slides. We won't go in depth on all of them. This visioning purpose, the question of why are we doing all of the visioning? So we are starting in this blue dot that you're seeing. The idea is by having this vision, really this litmus paper of what everybody wants it to be. You know, we asked that question early on, what's Columbia look like 50 years from now? The whole exercise of the character during our first meeting was to get the mindset going of be able to provide that vision statement. So the whole concept behind that is will come out of tonight's meeting with this statement or statements, as the case may be, that we'll be able to take all of our discussions and come back to it and be like, does that meet what we anticipate this to look like? If it does, great, continue forward. If it doesn't, then we know that recommendation needs to be tweaked, rethought, kind of more data I understood around it. This being without having something that we're all working towards, you're right, we might get to a point where we can never get to concurrence, and we're all kind of, we start in one point and we're all talking in different areas. Versus here, we've got something that's holding everyone accountable to come back on these recommendations. And again, as facilitators, that's our job, is to hear the vision from you, the task force, as it's developed, and to help guide those conversations to say like, hey, remember we talked about this. As we're discussing, you know, perhaps it's something within a final development plan or a combination of final development plans, because there's, you know, over 280 of them. Can any of them be combined? Can it be simplified? Maybe yes, maybe no. But our job as the lead facilitators is to then hold up this vision and say, hey, what we're talking about, it doesn't really meet this. You know, is this still the right thing, or is this maybe we need to rethink that recommendation? So I want to share those two items first to address a little bit of some of the concerns, hearing on the expectations rather than waiting to the end of the meeting to come back to them. So then let me come back to where we were and get into some of the prior meeting invitation. And give me one moment. as I rearranged my screens here. Thank you for your patience. All right. So in sharing this, there were questions that came up, and we always do want to honor those questions. And again, our role is to bring that information back. So the first one is with the meeting minutes. This is for the task force, and we'll talk about the information and how being transparent to the public, how we want to make sure that happens. So this first one really is about, we do want to approve / discuss the meeting minutes. Renee.
Yeah, so I read the meeting minutes, and what I saw was an outline of the meeting, but I didn't see the substance of the meeting. And to me, the minutes, I mean, you could have handed me that outline before the meeting. I want to see what the conversations were. Somebody said they, half the committee or half the group grew up in Columbia, half didn't. Half like Columbia as it sits, half don't. The environmental factors, whatever was brought up, I didn't see any of that meat in the minutes. What I saw was an outline. And so I'm concerned that we're already not capturing the work we're doing. Whoops.
Okay. Did you have another, or do you hit your hand up again?
No, I'm trying to learn how to use WebEx.
Oh, yeah, every virtual platform is very different. So typically what we would do at this point is we would have the voting process. We would have a motion to approve the meeting minutes as distributed. We would have a second to that motion, and then we would have discussion. And so I know, Renee, one of the items you brought up is as a discussion item. Given hearing that concern, and I heard it from someone else as well, and I'm looking to Sarah, if it is something that we would like to hold first meeting minutes to be able to then go back and add in some more information and bring this forward to the third meeting. Or if Sarah, you would like that we have that discussion now and then do the revised minutes.
We can certainly have the discussion now. I will double check with anyone else from the DPZ team has any thoughts on that, but I think if the task force is open to that, we can have the discussion and work on revisions if that's what the task force would like to do.
Great, that sounds good, Sarah.
Okay, is that the preference of the task force at this time? Let's go ahead and have the discussion, and we can get through the revisions and take notes and then bring them back forward. I'm seeing several heads nodding. Okay. Given that, so Renee, your comment was noted of wanting to see some more details in there, and we do have the copies of the boards and everything as photos, so we can certainly provide that into it also. Are there other discussion points for the meeting minutes? All right. Seeing none, what we will do is we'll table the meeting minutes for our next meeting, where we will have 2 versions of the meeting minutes to approve. We'll provide them, we'll send them out and provide them with additional information. Any questions or comments on that? Okay. Thank you for that information. Schedule for receiving materials. It was asked several times post meeting of just, what does that look like? So just wanted to provide the information. Here's the task force meeting, typically on the 4th Tuesday of the month, unless otherwise specified. No later than 3 business days before the meeting, you will get the agenda and the materials. No later than 2 business days after the meeting, the presentation will be posted. And then meeting minutes will be sent within 1 week after the meeting. So you certainly have those. If you have comments, likewise meeting recordings such as this one will be posted. If you do have comments or questions, certainly send those back out as well, so that we can incorporate any of those revisions, or at least have those prepared to show what those revisions might be at the next meeting. And then homework assignments will be within 2 to 3 weeks after a given meeting. There was a question at the last meeting regarding how the task force should be run, what the function of it is, and how it should be run. So this is the relevance to the Newtown Task Force. There were conversations held with the Office of Law between Planning and Zoning and the Office of Law, and it talks about the Administrative Procedures Act, which is what item was brought up by several of, do we need to have a chair or a vice chair as it's codified in Title II of the County Code? And really that last statement that's in bold is the executive order for the formation of Newtown Task Force does not authorize the task force to make rules, because our output is recommendations. We are providing recommendations back, not rulings back. And therefore the Administrative Procedures Act is not applicable to the task force. So did want to share that information as well. And continuing on regarding the Open Meetings Act, so something that is very relevant for the Newtown Task Force, because this is a public process and want to have transparency. All of our meetings are held in public, so this meeting was advertised. Members of the community are certainly welcome to join, as we had a member of the community join in the first task force. So all of our discussions of the task force work do need to be held, must be held in a publicly available meeting. So things such as agendas, minutes, recordings, everything should be public, posted on the website, publicly available. So as information is provided and sent around, that information, any of that information is information that also needs to make sure that we provide that publicly. And probably the hottest topic from our first meeting is about the covenants and how do covenants relate to the Columbia Newtown zoning regulations. So I want to share two different items here, some examples of zoning versus covenants on the screen. Again, for those who have not tried to do changes to their homes or who've not been through this process before or newer to Newtown zoning area, some of this may still be clear as mud. And so what we're looking to do is identify, one, what are these examples? And then in the next set of slides, what are we looking at making recommendations regarding? So zoning regulations are maintained and enforced by the county. They're the allowable land uses, what requires special approval, the bulk regulation. So basically saying overall, here's what this zone is, here's what this land use is. And generally it gets into parking and lighting requirements. And that's standard of what zoning is really around the country as well. Example of a covenant is a group or committee review requirements. They're maintained and enforced by specific parties that are listed in the deed. So we talked last time that they are not something that necessarily the county is involved in, and therefore this task force is not looking to go into those covenants. We will acknowledge that they exist, but we are not looking to rewrite or redo covenants because those are between private parties and part of deeds. And then they can include some of those specific aesthetic requirements that, every house in this neighborhood needs to fall within this color palette. And you can see that overlap. There's an overlap of covenants and zoning regulations for allowable uses, for bulk regulations such as setback, limit building types or heights. And it really comes down to some of this as you look at that bottom statement. Some things may not be, while it's permissible in zoning, it may not be permissible because there's a covenant within that deed for that property. So that is something as we move into these next set of slides of understanding the layers, just want to understand a little of how this all looks. So what you'll see is the star on the map. This is an assumed property here. If, let's say, that that property is, sorry, I have a little note up here, but that property is your property, you want to make a change to it. So you would look at Howard County for zoning. What is the zoning? Yeah. Okay, Howard County, then you are within Columbia. So you identify that you're within Columbia, and then you identify that you are within the Newtown zoning district, and that's identified in section 125 of the zoning regulations. From there, you would see that there is a preliminary development plan. And this is just showing you kind of a blow up of what that preliminary development plan. So that's something else that you would look at. You have within that concept sketch plan as well that is all rolled in with the final development plan. And again, this is just that FDP and details. With that final development plan, there's very specific site details. There is, with the site development plan, there's grading, and there's sediment and erosion control. And then there's what you can do for that. You know, this one is a deck addition. So looking at what that deck addition details are. Then all of that is, then you have to identify, are there covenants on this property? Are there covenants as part of this deed? And that's going to tell you as well. So what's the architectural look to it? So you might be able to put a deck on this property, but you're going to have specifications of what does that deck look like? What material can it be? What size can it be? That falls maybe within the covenant. So what we are looking at on this task force is we're looking at those zoning regulations, but we're really talking about the preliminary development plan, the comprehensive sketch plan, the final development plan, and the site development plan. We are not getting into the covenants. We have to recognize that they exist on properties, but we're not going to dive into the covenants and change them or really get into the details of covenants. What we're really going to do is say, hey, as a whole, there's something about green space or open space, so let's discuss that. And then recognize that if this property has a covenant on it, it might not be able to do it, but we're looking holistically at what can be done across the board. So we're going to pause there because I know I went through a lot of slides very quickly, several of them kind of reiterating comments and conversations to show it in different ways because we all learn differently. But I want to just pause and see if there are questions, comments on this material, and hoping that this is helping clarify. Greg, you're on mute if you're chatting.
I'm trying to unmute.
Okay.
Thank you. I couldn't disagree more with your definition of covenants. My understanding, it's been my understanding now for more than 50 years, is that these are not private agreements. They are simply covenants. And they run with the land. And when you talk about the preliminary development plan, something that we would call and was identified as the common scheme of development, that's a legal term. It's about the law, and the covenants are about the law. The county was there at the moment of conception. They are party to the covenants. They have been enforcing them all the way along. I don't know where this business came from about saying we don't enforce the covenants. I know of a case right here in my neighborhood where two acre parcels were defined to be as a part of the preliminary development plan or the scheme of development that we all bought into, and the whole thing was what was sold to us. A developer, 1980, 1981, a guy named Tony Souza wanted to come in and subdivide the lots, supposedly to build a family compound. He was turned down by the county because it would have violated the covenants and the scheme of development. He went to court and the court upheld it. So the county was involved in that. And to my knowledge, the county has got, the DPZ has got inspectors running all over the county, overseeing jobs every single day of every work week in the year. And they're sending people to Howard Hughes for approvals, whatever. By doing that, they are enforcing the covenants. So you can't say that we do not enforce the covenants. In point of fact, you do it every day. You've been doing it for 50 some years.
Renee, I saw you. I'll just call on you, Renee, and then I'll call on Brian.
No, don't call on me. I'm watching this party.
Okay, because you were shaking your head as if
I'm shaking my
No,
head
it's
all the way
me.
around.
Okay.
So
I'm the one that's been shaking my head. This is Joan, and I beg to differ on the particulars of the Sousa case. The county approved the subdivision of the Sousa case, and in fact, it was the Columbia Association who used the Sousa case as the first example of the enforcement of the covenants, and that the village of Hickory Ridge, through the Columbia Association, sued to have the subdivision that the county had approved rescinded because they had not gone through the architectural process. That 1980s case was the first case of CA's covenant enforcement.
Can I?
And okay, let me go to Renee and then Brian, and then we will go ahead.
So
Renee.
I think we can argue about the covenants all day long. I'm going to say that I think there's an issue with covenant and covenant enforcement, no question about it. But I'm here looking at zoning. And I think we have to figure out, there is a question here, not necessarily about covenant enforcement, because you showed my covenants, River Hill. I deal in it all day long up to my ears. But I think there are legal questions that I don't understand. And I think it varies from village to village about how, what the role is from one village to enforce architectural guidelines versus CA versus somebody else. But I'm here looking at the zoning regulations, and I have questions about if you were to change a zoning regulation, like where my lot is, where I'm sitting right now, and the covenants didn't allow that, how does that all play out? Does that end up in court? What are we setting up? Those are my questions. And I think Greg has good questions too, but I think there's a philosophical question about the covenants. I think that CA was basically grandfathered in by state law to be an HOA. Yes, the county set it up, but the covenants are a private document. And I think having an attorney here to explain this all, that is a land use expert, would really help us all a lot. Because I have 100 questions, Greg has 100 questions, and I'm sure other people do too. But I think, dealing with really good experts would help us all a lot. And I'm sure you're good at land use. You got certified. I went to school in land use before there were certifications. But I think having a lawyer here who could really lay this out would help me enormously.
Thank you for that comment. And Brian.
Yeah, well,
and I'm sorry, very quickly, after you've spoken, please make sure to put your hand down again too.
Okay, I will do that. Okay, well, I see that you're right. There's parts of this with to do with oversight is covenants, but it's also to do with design guidelines and zoning. All these things come together to give a look at Columbia. So one of the things I've constantly tried to get is to really understand the roles of each entity, Howard Hughes, the CA, and the county. Now, Joan just pointed out where the CA was actively involved. We don't see the CA actively involved at the moment. We got Howard Hughes that's missing in action. Today, I got a couple of phone calls from people from the county related to 3 zoning complaints I put in, and they're all related to the landscaping being removed from gas stations in Columbia. Typically, gas stations in Columbia, you normally can't see them. So I put in these 3 complaints, and there is the process in DPZ or in the county, whatever department it happens to be, where you put these complaints in, and then they investigate them. And it was clearly told to me how that process went. And little known to me, someone else was going through the same thing, trying to get this particular gas station to replant what they'd taken out. And they were given a copy of the process and actually how the violation would be handled. But since when I went through the process, there was not the institutional knowledge passed on. So when a new person came in to continue, he's following a completely different process. So I think we really need, the idea of looking at the vision for Columbia is wonderful. This is great. I love that idea, but we must know how we're going to go forward and how each entity is going to work in the future. It's extremely important. We can't ignore that.
Absolutely. So again, thank you for that comment. And I think really what each of you is hitting on is really why that SWOT analysis is so important and that next step. So the vision being that first item, and I'll go through the thought and then come back on that, come back to you, Brian. But the idea is, what are we going to hold everything against? Because then as we get into strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, what I'm hearing from each of you is exactly that. It's some of the weaknesses of currently how it's done. So again, some of the recommendations, as we're talking about new town recommendations, it might not even be that it's a specific zoning recommendation. It might be that somewhere it needs to be codified. Who are the entities? What are the roles? What are the checklists? Maybe it is developing a very concise checklist. Maybe it's a recommendation of when a zoning request or concern is put in, it's put into a public forum in some capacity so that this parcel, there's these questions regarding it. And I think these are all very good discussions and conversations. And these are all things that as we talk about kind of what does that vision look like of, hey, 50 years from now, here's what we want it to be. We still want it to be. And again, maybe it is the initial vision that was set forward by Jim Rouse is exactly that. And if we want it to be exactly that, are there challenges in how complex the situation is? As Renee pointed out, there's so many zoning questions. And as there's zoning questions, what that really comes back to, and what I hear in that process, what I hear in that list of 100 some zoning questions is this is not a simple process, that the people who are in charge and their roles are, as Renee, of running a village, there's so much information, there's so many variations that maybe the recommendation, understanding that, is simply that this needs to be simplified, still maintaining, and again, going back up against that vision. So Brian, I know as I started speaking, you were about to share something. I'll go back to Greg.
Okay, thank you.
Joan, is your hand still up from before, or did you have one more thing to add in? Okay. And then we'll move into the next piece.
Well,
just to be
look,
cognizant
just one
of
thing
our time.
before you go. Before
Sure.
you go, you've got all 3 entities, that Howard Hughes, CA, and the county, on this task force. Wouldn't it be simple to just have statements from them about what they feel their role is? What's hard about that? Can't we start with that? And again, I go back to why are we going to reinvent everything? I mean, as I say, I love this idea of looking for the vision for the future, but we really need to look at the task force, the 2007, what they task force and what they recommended.
Absolutely. And that is, again, part of looking at in that SWOT analysis.
Okay, thank you.
Is bringing that information forward so that we can have all of that information at hand, the case studies that we'll touch on briefly tonight, and then be able to go through that. And again, this is where, I said earlier of The content is coming from this task force. So as you're asking these questions, this is where we're going to go back and kind of bring more information forward.
Okay. I
Right.
did press the button to lower my hand, and it says raise. It didn't happen. Oh, it's happened now. Okay.
Yes,
You
it
laid
has
me out.
happened. It's
Okay.
usually there's a delay. Thank you,
Okay.
though.
Thank you. I'd like to second Renee's suggestion about having an attorney come and talk to us. And I'd like to volunteer something for the committee's consideration. One of my best friends and source of a lot of my information, a guy by the name of John Healy, worked at Mr. Rouse's knee for 7 years, 8 years, from 1965 until 72 or 73, drafting the covenants. He is one of 5 or 6 lawyers who was asked by the American Bar Association to form a college of real property law, which is what we're talking about. That's the field within the body of law. Goes back to Magna Carta. He's an expert, spent his life doing it, and I would be happy if the committee would like to make him available to brief us and educate us on the matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Can you please forward his contact information to Jeff?
I will do that.
Thank you. All right, in the interest of time, I do want to continue moving us forward in our materials. I do hope that this great discussion, one, it is bringing information forward to help provide content as well for our next meeting. But I do hope that it has helped in at least some components of just understanding a little bit better that we are here to put together recommendations, that our recommendations will be regarding these zoning regulations, and that draft report will be really, as I mentioned before, we will be pulling the documentation together, but it is coming from this task force. I am here as a facilitator to help continue the conversations, as well as help keep us on time. So sometimes, as I did, we will have to cut the discussions a little bit short so we can at least touch on all the topics and then certainly circle back to anything else we need. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Toby. This is really an introduction on some of the case studies. There is some information pertaining to similar zoning in the virtual notebook. Some of these you'll also see you can learn about online as well, as you would like to do some additional research. So Toby.
Jennifer, because I actually have the information, so much of the information I was going to present anyway is on the slides. I'm wondering, for the sake of time, if we might skim through it perhaps, but actually have it shifted so that we go into depth in that kind of thing for the next meeting. When we're doing the SWOT analysis, we can talk about other places and things that are going on and move into the actual visioning.
Sure. Thank you for that, Toby. I'll just touch on these then. There are 3 areas that have a similar style. Of course, nothing is exactly the same. Montgomery, and these are relatively close in the grand scheme of looking at the full country, of Montgomery Village, Maryland, Reston, Virginia, and Greenbelt, Maryland. What you will receive and what will be posted within 2 days after this meeting is this information that talks about who the developer and the visionary was for each of these developments, roughly when it came to be, so you can look at as well the general time frame and compare that to what is here in Newtown, what the size of it is, so that you can understand again from a sizing perspective. So Montgomery Village is much smaller than what Newtown is, what some of those key focus areas and preservation and what that compatibility looks like for new and existing development, and some of the zone characteristics. So that information is on each of these. And the things that you'll see, again, is the sizing, looking at where it was and what it is now, what those focus areas are. And again, noting that these are all coming back to relatively the same time frame as Newtown zoning in the Columbia area. And then the last one actually was in Greenbelt, and Greenbelt is another one that is frequently learned about as you go through the certification processes and planning and understanding that. But it talks about when that actually started, as well as when that community led to incorporation. So again, looking at some of this time frame, the sizing of it, and a lot of it is about preservation of character and open space and what that means. I know we had some individuals who were very much looking forward to these case studies. This information will be there, and we will bring that this is the reason why we wanted to bring it forward tonight. This is what we'll also look to when we get into the SWOT analysis, to better understand how some others have done it. Again, it was said, why reinvent the wheel? That is a very accurate statement, not just for what's here in the Newtown zoning district, but also if through these case studies, understanding what some of the challenges and benefits have been that others have already tried. So with that, let's go ahead and move into the visioning exercise and incorporating the task force homework. So you saw this slide already. The intention of this is really so that we have something to always come back to and say, is this recommendation in line with where we expect Columbia to be the 50 years from now? What is our statement or statements that we want to measure everything up against from recommendations? So we are not here to create a brand new vision statement for Columbia. Columbia has that in the HOCO by design that talks about to be more equitable, more predictable, more sustainable, and more achievable. And there's some information here of what does that mean? And the equity really gets into a lot of things that were discussed about already by this task force and some of those key words. The predictability really goes back to several of the points that have already been made here tonight as well, even within Newtown. How do we know what it's going to look like? How do we help shape that? Sustainability as well, sharing that growth and preservation, and achievability. Can this be achieved? And these are all things from the county's perspective. This vision statement exists. We're not looking to redefine that. Likewise, there is the Columbia Association of Plan for Columbia that has a mission of engage diverse community, cultivate unique sense of place, and enhance quality of life. And the vision of a Columbia that is intentionally diverse, committed to wellness, sustainable, beautiful, connected, and resilient. So again, we are not looking to reshape that. What we're looking to do is recognize that those statements are out there and using that, embracing that, and then understanding with the Newtown zoning, how do we have statements that are impactful of all of that, but yet that we want to do our measure our recommendations against. From the homework, we inputted all of the homework assignments, and this is a word cloud. So what a word cloud is the more a word is repeated in different comments or in different statements, the larger that word becomes and the more bold it becomes. And so this is a very basic, community, place, people, future, live, vibrant, thrive. So very basic. These were the major major words that came out of all of the homework assignments. In addition with those, they really came on these major themes from each of them as well. So this is another, when you put things into really AI, as we look at it and we understand how that's looking and doing our own analysis as well. And you can see in here that all of the vision statements came back to these major themes of the founding vision and respect for the past, future-oriented and dynamic, urban and community development, inclusivity and diversity, nature and sustainability, connectivity and integration, community well-being and quality of life. So each of these are coming back together to those same major, those word clouds. I wanted to share that as a group because what we're going to do now is go into our group sessions. Each of our facilitators has these slides to share. And the intention is looking at that word cloud, looking at those major themes. Each group is going to come up with basically a vision statement, a grouping of words that you will agree to and come to concurrence on. And if it comes to be more than one statement, that's fine. But then we'll come back together, look at the output from the 4 groups, and then identify from there, do we have an overall theme, or do we still have 4 statements to move forward with? We will do this with 15 minutes of time. And I know, Sarah, are you good to set up the group or split us into our groups? So just before we move into groups, I want to make sure from our facilitators that you are all have your materials, and from our members, our task force members, that the output of this group session is to come to a concurrence on a vision statement, a grouping of words of what we should be using essentially as that litmus test for any recommendations of what we want Columbia to still look like. All right.
With that, I will go ahead and send you all into breakout sessions.
Thank you.
Did I fail to join my breakout session?
I might be able to re-invite you. Let's see. You should be in group. You're in group 3. Try this one more time. Interestingly enough, let me see if I can resend you the invite, because it looks like you are in the breakout session.
Yeah, I hit join and something happened, but
Just didn't quite.
then now I'm back.
Let me move you. You might jump around a minute, but I'll move you real quick. Did you get an invite?
All right, join now.
All right, and then you might get another one.
I am
be able to
that
exactly.
share.
diversity is necessary.
Yeah, I'll take that out of there for now.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. I know there's never enough time, no matter how much time we have. So let me, and for our facilitators, have you sent me?
Oh. 1 second, Jen. I'll send it to you.
So I will, as they're sending it, and I will be adding them in. So what I'm going to do is share my screen, and you will be able to see as I'm typing it in. So my group came up with really a number of words, and it was really about community and diversity, interconnected, vibrant, thriving, growing, a place for everything, a garden city. Another group, you can hear the dings, that's as it's coming into me, is to be respectful of past ordinances and bylaws, but to continue to grow an inclusive and integrated community. Oh, that would not be, that would just be a repeat. Another one is inclusiveness, people, community, diversity, spirit of Columbia maintained, nature, walkable, and green space. And then the last is people connecting together, housing, growth and development, connection to land, people, process. I'll take all the bold off of it. So this really is, as we look at this, there is quite a bit of the same words coming through and those same thoughts coming through, and something to really use for us as we move forward. I do just want to take a few moments here and ask folks to raise their hand, and hopefully some of our folks who haven't talked as much yet tonight can pitch in and share. If not, I'm always about the volunteering as well. But is there some, is there a sentence, is there a sentiment that is really striking folks coming out of this? Scott.
As a facilitator, am I allowed to make a statement?
You are.
Okay. In our group, and what I've heard last meeting and throughout this meeting, there's a lot of talk of people and community and diversity and inclusivity. So I get the feeling it's a very tight-knit community that takes care of its people, and the other things like the open space and things like that are the things that aid in maintaining that inclusivity and diversity and the happiness, I guess, and the spirit of Columbia. That's my take. I don't live in Columbia, but that's just my kind of thought digesting all this stuff from the last two meetings. So for whatever that's worth.
Thoughts, reactions?
I appreciate getting someone that's not as inbred as some of us seem to be regarding Columbia, hearing what we're saying and able to capture it. So thank you for speaking up.
Mm-hmm. Now, I did live there for 1 year when I first moved to Maryland in the mid-90s, but I was only there for 1 year.
I just tried to react and the reactions are turned off.
Okay. Well, I will, I'll go to Michael and then Brian, I'll ask for your reaction.
Well, it was only to put the fun on that.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. You're welcome to do that just this way. Michael G, I saw your hand raised.
Yeah, I guess what I think might be a bit missing from these is an embrace of the future, that we need to be focused on how we want Columbia to be better in the future. And I think it's really important to honor some of the values that Columbia was based on, right, of diversity and socioeconomic integration, but also have a forward-looking approach of what can be changed in the future to make sure we carry that forward. Because if we try to maintain the built environment as it is today, we will prohibit that vision from moving forward into the future, because we can't be a socioeconomically integrated community if we don't have more houses built here. So again, it needs to be future oriented and really making sure that we allow for the change that will be necessary to maintain the values we were founded on.
Great. Well, thank you for that. And with, as I mentioned, what will come out of this is really that statement or statements. So we will take all of these. There are several words that are repetitive, and using as kind of our litmus paper, really taking this information and to bring that back as what we're using this against, what we're using our recommendations against. Fran, I see your hand up, and then I'll move into our online survey.
Well, I was just thinking that Columbia is definitely a place. If you were blindfolded and put in a car and taken in various parts of the county, I think you would know when you were in Columbia by walking a few blocks in either direction. So we need to value its uniqueness, whatever we do. When we need to regenerate, but we need to value its uniqueness.
Okay. And what I'll put with that, because its uniqueness is its history as well, and the values that it was established with. And I think that goes a lot, you know, I've heard a lot of concerns as we've discussed that we can't just throw things away. And that's not our intention. It's, you know, we still want to honor that visionary that this was started with, and then identify how is that relevant moving forward. So as you say uniqueness, I want to, as long as you're comfortable with that, I want to say that that uniqueness is, it's based on its history that established it. Okay. So we do have a few more topics here. So let me go back to from current slide. And Greg, I'll ask for your input and then we'll move on.
I'm trying to unmute.
Got it.
Well,
You're
thank
there.
you. Thank
Oh, you muted yourself again. And now you're unmuted again. It looks like you've been pressing the button a few
Am I
times.
okay? Can you hear?
I
can
can
you
hear
hear
you
me?
now. Yes.
Okay. Just as a historical reference, going back to Michael Kalibersuch's comment on socioeconomic integration, that was very much in the forethought in the early part of Columbia, and there were a lot of efforts made in that direction. I think one of the phenomena that happened, and I was involved with it a lot through my business, is as we opened up different neighborhoods and villages in Columbia, once we got off the ground, say by 73, 74, and people were beginning to embrace it, and the word got out about how good the schools were, the product was just swooped off the street so fast that, the builders, essentially what they did is they sold a little section, they raised their prices, supply and demand, and it got out of hand. So I offered that comment that was so attractive, that just to point out, it's very difficult, and maybe you all up at DPZ and you all at JMT might have an academic perspective on it from having studied it. But if there's a lack of that, it's not because the community wasn't committed to it or people weren't trying. It was just people came in and they bought, and here we are, and maybe we're stratified from a income perspective, but I think from a social perspective, I think we probably are reflective of the state of Maryland. So, for what it's worth.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. So as far as next steps, so this will become really, and all of this will become our metrics by which we will use as a test as we look into and start digging into that strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats analysis, which is our next grouping of meetings. This will become the, is what we're doing still providing inclusivity? Is it still keeping that spirit of Columbia maintained? Are we embracing the future while honoring the values? So really, while the goal was to come out with kind of a succinct statement, each of these, I'm pretty sure if I could run these through a thesaurus, they would come up very similar to each other because the general feel is there in each of them of the connection, that growth. Well, and the others that were at the top of the page that had a animation put on them. I know we have very, very limited time, and I do want to be respectful. Is everybody comfortable if we do take an additional 5 minutes? I see heads, thumbs up. Thank you very much for that. So the online survey, questions for the general public. As we mentioned before, there will be 2 public meetings. One is being anticipated for the September timeframe, and we'll show that. And so kind of in the back of your head, think about potential locations as well. If you have those, please send those in to Jeff and Sarah. And the other will come at the end as the draft recommendations are developed so that everybody has a say in this. The task force is here to lead this effort, but all of the community has a say in this. For both of those meetings, we will be putting out an online survey, and that survey is really for this coming meeting. That survey is going to be speaking to those words we just pulled together. Do people agree with those? Do they agree with the sentiment? Are there other sentiments that they want to share? It will also start asking questions related to the SWOT analysis, asking questions of what are people's concerns? What do they find as the strengths of Columbia? What do they find as the concerns and things that need to be addressed? The output of all of that will feed into our October meeting. And the only reason I don't say our September meeting is they're going to coincide pretty quickly to each other, but that output from that survey will be coming in so that everybody on this task force will have the benefit of the results of those online survey questions. When this comes out, we do want to ask each of you to help distribute it far and wide so that it really has a good following and we get some great, robust results from it. The introduction to the SWOT analysis, we keep talking about it, and that's our nuts and our bolts. So really the introduction tonight is very high level, and we'll get into it more detail at our next meeting. But what we're really going to start doing is some of these questions we've been hearing, and I do appreciate all the great conversation that's come of, the fact that there are 100 questions for zoning. Well, does that mean that it's too complex? That in and of itself is potentially one of the things that we need to look at. But then also, what else do we need to take a look through? So what we will really do is start picking apart and coming from these past meetings, some of these hot topics, but also bringing forward some of the other topics as we're digging into the zoning, as you're reviewing that section 125 and you're going through it. Are there hot topics that are coming up to you? And you'll see that on the next agenda. So we'll start digging into that and saying, okay, is this a strength? The fact that we have Newtown zoning, is that a strength? What are the weaknesses in it? What are the concerns that's going to change from an outside force that we need to identify a recommendation to maybe put those guardrails on? So then the homework for the next meeting. And your responses should be, and I'll put all of this up here, no later than August 22nd. So you do get a little bit of extra time. So an additional week. That's to thank you for these 5 minutes. Think of a time when you made a change to your property that involved Newtown zoning process. Now, if you have not made a change to your property, a time when you've been involved with something that's happened in a change as a developer, maybe you've gone through the process as members of the different boards and agencies, maybe you've been involved in different components. Feel free to ask a neighbor if you know they've gone through something, but basically list the top 3 things that went well in the process of implementing the change. List the top 3 most challenging aspects of the experience. And then consider if there are changes to Newtown zoning that could have been beneficial in that instance. So again, think about what it takes to change something, whether through your personal experience, your professional experience, or talk to a neighbor. The top things that went well, the top 3 most challenging aspects, and then what a change in Newtown zoning in some capacity. You don't have to dig into the language, but is there a recommendation that came out of it? Like, hey, maybe we shouldn't have so many public meetings. Maybe we shouldn't have so many FDPs. I'm just throwing those out there. Those aren't necessarily the changes, but is there something that would have been beneficial in that instance? This will be sent out again as an email follow-up. So if you don't have it in this moment, you'll get the information posted and you'll get an email with this information specific. Does the homework make sense for everyone? Are there questions on the homework?
I actually don't think this homework does make a lot of sense, right? Because I think that the folks from HRD and Abrams and Costello can probably answer this. But for the most of us who are just homeowners, we would never, if we want to do some slight modification to our home, that would just be an actual case of dealing with our covenants, and it had nothing to do with Newtown. Like, there's no way any of my neighbors have had to deal with the Newtown process in altering their home.
You'd be surprised.
Okay. Let me go to Karen, and then I'm thinking at the same moment, Michael, for you. Karen.
Yeah, I've just built what Michael said. I do think that there are examples where people have dealt with Newtown zoning, but it's not necessarily their personal property. So does it have to be your personal property? I mean, Brian had that example earlier about the trees around the gas station at Broken Land and Stevens Forest Road, but does it have to be your personal property?
So let's go ahead and I thank you for that clarification, because as you noted, some of these might be just with the covenants and some might be others. So it does not have to be your personal property. So think about it from that perspective. If you have something from your personal property that's had to deal with the zoning, that's gone to those different levels, go ahead and use that. If you can identify something else, perhaps think about what it would take for something within the villages or the gas stations or something of that capacity. The idea of the homework is to really walk through and then think about what went well and what were the 3 most challenging things.
What about from the perspective of a business owner and building in the Newtown zone?
Well,
we've got David Costello on here. He's probably got some great examples of for and against it. I think that's
right, and he'll be able to use those examples.
Okay, so we can, so we take it from our experience of dealing with Newtown zoning, period.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, and Mary, I did see you come off of mute for a moment, so I wanted to ask if there was a question or Clarification.
Yes, I was just going to try to help provide a clarification. So it sounds like the homework doesn't have to be specific to somebody's individual property. It could be if they're knowledgeable of another Newtown zoning process and what some of the challenges may have been or versus what may have went well. So just backing you up.
Great, thank you. And Ashley, I see your hand is raised as well.
Yeah, so it says be prepared to discuss at the next task force meeting. So is the idea that every participant is going to go through and share that information? Mike and no, great, wonderful. I was definitely concerned it would just turn into basically a bitch session about things that haven't been going well.
No,
that would take a very long time.
Yes, the idea is, again, the homework is due August 22nd, so we can, similar to this past homework, run some analysis on it and identify some of the major items from each of those, especially if we see themes across it. And the output of this homework is really going to feed into that SWOT analysis to give some beginning things to talk through.
Thank you.
From a wrap up, what we will do, a lot of the expectations that were shared early on, and you can see the list, and these are all in here, is we really have hit on a lot of these, and we'll circle back given the timing and make sure that information similar to the first meeting to the second meeting, that information that has been requested, that we'll have a section that just addresses that so that we can make sure everybody is getting the information that they're asking for. We're providing kind of what that base knowledge is, so that can be used by this task force in the process. In the future, some of the pending topics, we will bring forward information about demographics over the years to just help understand, as Newtown was developed, what did the scene look like? As we have it today, what does that scene look like? So we can make sure that, again, that achievability component is honored. The massing really starts looking at here's what Newtown looks like from a sizing, and then we're able to really pull shapes together. This will be more of an in-person meeting item, but pulling shapes together, to help really that functionality of what things look like together. And of course, the SWOT. Again, where we are today is within the visioning. Our next time we get together, which will be in September, we will start digging into that SWOT analysis. Our upcoming meetings, our September 30th meeting is virtual. Please note, this is actually the 5th Tuesday of the month, September 30th. There is no task force meeting in August. And then in October, we will have an in-person meeting. We are anticipating a September 2025 public meeting. If you have recommendations for a great location, please email that to Jeff and Sarah so that they can look into that. So obviously, as everybody uses this community space, you have great knowledge about it. So please share that with Jeff and Sarah. Given our time, please go ahead and email any comments that you may have out of tonight's meeting, and we will share those publicly at our next meeting as well. So again, the homework due date is August 22nd. Task force meeting number 3 is September 30th. And then task force meeting number 4, which will be back to in-person, is in October with that date to be determined. I do want to thank everybody for all the great conversations. We do have, I've said it before, there's a lot of difference of opinions and backgrounds and what's next. And I really appreciate that everybody came forward, brought those thoughts forward, and that we have worked through, if not resolved, we have at least discussed, and we have a lot of great content to move forward with into our next meeting. Just wanted to ask Mary if you had any final thoughts.
Thanks so much. No, I don't, but I appreciate everybody's time and participation. And I hope everybody has a lovely night. Thanks for giving us a few extra minutes tonight.
Yes, thank you so much for allowing us to take the additional time. And I hope everyone has a wonderful evening and a great rest of your summer. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.